Yeah, I was standard. My agent sends me lots of scripts. I read very few good scripts,
Yeah.
and this was a good script, a remarkably good script. Just really rare. And yeah, I read the book, and then I went and met Greg and auditioned for him. It's kind of what's the normal way of getting involved with a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
It was sent to me through Jeff Levy-Hinty, who produced a film I did a couple years back called 13, and then so Jeff knew they were kind of casting for this, and he'd sent me the script. I'd already read the book previously, but anyway, it was so yeah, that's kind of how I came into it, and then I ultimately just went and read with Greg.
Well, in most scripts, in the first scene you meet the hero, and then the hero goes along his journey and whatever, meets a girl, kills a bad guy, and that's the movie. And this script has got this dual story going where you've got two characters going along whose paths eventually intertwine, but I don't know any other movie that works quite like that. And when you hear it described, you might think like, oh, that sounds weird. Is it one of those kind of arty movies? Is it one of those experimental things? But it doesn't read like, the script didn't read like that, and the movie doesn't seem like that. It seems like you're just watching a movie. And when the two characters that haven't met until the end finally meet, I know the first time I saw the movie, I was like, oh, wow, yeah, there hasn't even been a scene between us yet. And I really like it. It's special.
Yeah.
It's a remarkably good adaptation. It's kind of like, in having read the book, I was kind of nervous actually to pick it up and read it, and hoping that I was like, great, what did they do? Rape his corpse? Is it terrible? And
rape his corpse.
But because Scott just has the most beautiful prose, and
Scott's corpse.
Yeah, Scott's corpse. Yeah. And so, I was concerned, and I read it, and Greg just adapted it with so much passion, and it was so intricate and particular and specific, and it just got me excited. And so, so anyway, yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful story, and I think the dual storyline is kind of beautifully pulled off by what Greg, by this, what Greg did with the structure of it. Generally, if you want to build up a rapport with the other actors. This one, wasn't really the case, and we saw each other in passing, on the set and stuff, and kind of hello, but nothing major at all. And it wasn't until we did that, the last scene, or at least certainly the first scene that we meet, that we really spoke at all, or properly spoke anyway, had a decent conversation. Yeah, well, it was interesting because I think that it was the first time we acted together, and so it was kind of like there was something new to us. I mean, we'd already seen each other and kind of met each other.
And we knew that we were both working on this movie.
Yeah,
and we knew what the other one was up to because we had read those scenes, but we hadn't been there for them.
Right.
So there was that mystery and excitement to it. Like, oh, so that's him. That's how he's playing.
Yeah,
this
it was,
character.
and it was really exciting because I was really, I was just really pleased to see that Joe was doing such kind of a wonderful job with it, because it's a really complex performance, and it's complexly written, and it's hardly one note. It could have seemed like this kind of broken hustler, but he's very charming and that was important, so that everyone understood why it is that everyone's so kind of attracted to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway. I think it's kind of freeing. I mean, if you get to do something that is that, especially if you get to play a character that was completely silent, for instance, I think that it frees you up to be more spontaneous and not have to worry about getting the words out. I mean, but I mean, obviously there is plenty of dialogue. It's just, but I just don't even know what to say.
I've been
outside
watching
of that.
I've been watching a bit of silent movies recently. It's a whole different style of acting. Obviously, you
Yeah.
don't have the words
Yeah.
to act with. And what's cool about Mysterious Skin and the character I got to play, in terms of those silent movie actors, is you're right. Neil, the character I played, he doesn't talk too much. He tells a lot of his story with his body and with his actions, but now it's 2004, so we can do some sexy stuff that the silent film actors wouldn't have been allowed to do.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite things about the sexy scenes in the movie is a lot of sex scenes, they're just sex scenes.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, here's the story, and here's these two characters, and okay, the movie will now have an intermission while we look at our two actors naked.
Yeah.
Bring in the slow motion, bring in the cheesy music. And the scenes in this movie, they're the opposite of that. They're crucial story points, and the story advances within the scene, and there's beats and emotions, and it reminded me sometimes of that silent film acting where you have to hit the beats and tell the story with your body. Yeah, and a lot of people tell me that I swallow my words in the movie, which, first of all, I met a guy in Kansas City who talks just like that, and you had to pay attention to understand what he was saying. But I kind of like the fact that you can't exactly understand everything that he says, because it's not so much about the words that he says, it's about what he's doing or how he looks or what his body's doing.
I actually have really lovely memories of it. I mean, even though it is, even though we were dealing with subject matter that we all had to be kind of delicate with in light of the kind of potential darkness of the subject, we were all so passionate about it and loved it so much that we were just so pleased to be working on something we loved, even on days where we were shooting really dramatic, heavy stuff. I mean, when you're kind of immersed in that, of course, there's kind of a darkness to that afternoon or that day or that evening. But ultimately, when it's all done, it's just so invigorating to just be pleased with everyone. And I truly, it was really a set of friends. Like, it was just a set of wonderful, talented, sweet people. The sweetest set I've ever been on.
Right.
And so it was a genuine pleasure. Very specific.
Yeah, Greg knows real well what not to say. A lot of directors say too much, and they'll get you confused and almost self-aware. I remember a conversation I had with Greg before we started shooting. We sat down, and I had my book with me, and I wanted to show him all the different stuff that I'd underlined in the novel and my thoughts on who knows what I was talking about, all the different things that I learned in college how to say. And he listened to everything I had to say, and he had his comments, but basically at the end of what I said, he was like, yeah, I don't think you need to think about it too much. I think you got it, don't worry.
Right.
And it worked.
He kept us free. He just kept us really free, and free of being kind of heady about it. And all actors can tend to get a little bit heady. Get a little, because you become very self-aware, so even for the briefest of moments you become kind of self-centered or kind of wrapped up, and it's kind of, and then it's nice to just have someone come up to you and say, oh, just let it go, it's all right, and it was simple as that, and that was kind of the tone of the set. But he's certainly very specific in how he makes a film and his working environment, and because he's editing his films, he would only need two. I mean, it would be. Very rarely I felt like we ever got to do an entire scene as a whole, except the more dramatic scenes. A couple of the more dramatic scenes, we would read them all the way through. But because he knew what angle he was going to be using here, here, and here, he would just I'll get 2 lines on the master, and then I'll go over and I'll grab, 5 lines here or on the close-up. And, so he's so specific and particular. That's the reason he gets away with making these beautiful movies that cost so little money.
Yeah.
He could watch the entire movie in his head before we even got involved.
Yeah.
And he made it very clear to us what that movie was. I mean, from the script to anything he said. Script to screen, it's exactly as I'd imagined it. It's almost exactly like I'd imagined it, and that never happens. And so for Greg to be such a brilliant communicator, to communicate that to an audience, or to us, was incredible and exciting.
You'd be surprised the directors that show up, highly paid directors that show up and go, well, what are we going to shoot today?
Yeah.
And, Greg's the opposite of that. And you have it feels good acting for him, because when he says, good, that was it, 100%, that's what he had in mind, and what he has in his mind is perfect in the entirety of the film. And so if he likes it, cool.
The last scene of the film I'll never forget for as long as I live. That was it. It left a profound, lasting effect on me, because I would really say it was that evening that Joe and I became very close. Because how could we not, really? As a result of we kind of were forced to, and I've just never felt that in touch with anything previously, and we shot it for hours and hours.
Man. Brady is channeling some shit.
But it was just I'll just never forget that. I had dreams about it for several nights afterwards. It was actually this weird thing. It's like a song that gets stuck in your head. They weren't quite nightmares or anything. They were just these kind of. I remember that evening, I could almost smell it. It was just a very specific night. It meant, because it meant so much to these characters, it meant a lot to us, just in a different way. And, it was kind of spectacular. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's not nearly as exciting to talk about it as it was to do it.
I don't feel too sad about it now, after this much time has passed, because we still have so much going on with the film. We're still kind of in the midst of it. It feels like we're immersed in it, but I went through postpartum depression for like a month, after it was finished. It just, because you feel like you're just leaving this kind of small family you formed, and it's very, and it's kind of corny, but it's true. You feel very at home, and I wasn't used to not seeing Greg every day, or Mary Jane, the producer, every day, and everyone whom I just loved, and
making a movie is different than writing a book or painting a picture. There's 100 people involved, and the actors and the director get a lot of the credit, but if the guy holding the boom isn't into it, it shows. I believe that it shows. I think that's why a lot of the corporate studio movies are so stilted and boring, is because most of the people there are just earning a paycheck. But everybody on our set was there because they believed in it. They weren't making any money, so they were doing it because they loved it.
Exactly. It's you occasionally come across big studio films. It just happens that it's people feel passionately about it, and it has money, but they're kind of hard to come by. They're very hard to come by. Not to say that it's like indie movies are the best thing on the planet. They certainly aren't. There's tons of shitty indie movies, tons, that But anyway, but generally, even the shitty indie movies, people generally still feel passionately about them. They're just
Yeah.
misguided. So, yeah.